So let's have a look at treating hip pain. Now, in order to treat hip pain, we need to know where the hip pain is coming from. And there are really sort of three big ones. There are other causes, as always, but there are three major culprits. One can be a lumbar pathology, which I'll talk to you about. Other thing could be Piriformis syndrome, which I'll also talk to you about, and osteoarthritis. Now, let's start with the lumbar pathology. Now, so in other words, just like I talked about when we were talking about the lower back, this pushing down, this disc getting pushed backwards. Now that can then, it can go right the way down the leg as in sciatica, or it can just go into that buttock area. And it will be generally worse if the person's sitting and slouching, okay? Because if for the same reasons, it pushes the disc backwards, the central portion of the disc, and then affects the sciatic nerve, presses on that, and it goes into their buttock. So it becomes more uncomfortable generally after they've been sitting. Now, Piriformis syndrome, so in your buttock, you've got a muscle called the piriformis, and the sciatic nerve can go underneath. It depends, this is how you were born. Some people have it, the piriformis will be there and the sciatic nerve goes underneath it. Other people have it over the top of it. And an unlucky certain percentage of people have the sciatic nerve going through the piriformis. So when the piriformis gets tight, now, by the way, piriformis syndrome can happen to any of those three scenarios. It's not just when it goes through, but when the piriformis tightens up, it can then press on the sciatic nerve and create that pain. Now that is also worsened after say 20 minutes or so of people sitting. Okay, so both of those are worsened by sitting. So I'll go into this shortly on what to do to help if it's one or the other. Okay, the third one, osteoarthritis. Now, for those of you who don't know, osteoarthritis is basically the wear and tear on the joint. Rheumatoid arthritis is an immune system disorder. The body's fighting against itself, and you'll generally see rheumatoid arthritis in the fingers, that sort of thing, most commonly. Whereas osteoarthritis is just mechanical. And that's why you see it on weight-bearing joints like knees. Like people will say generally, I got knee pain, or it's osteoarthritis, or hip pain, because it's just the joints wearing down. It's just like if you have a car, after a while, parts start to wear down. We're the same, walking, standing, this sort of thing. The articular surfaces just get ground down. Now, by the way, studies have shown that, interesting, the link is not, it's not a concrete link between, and this goes throughout all of the body, whether it's be disc bulges, and arthritis, that sort of thing. Just because a person gets an X-ray and oh my God, now this has become a big problem because with MRIs and X-rays and that sort of thing, doctors would just go, oh, you've got to have an operation because look at all this destruction of the joint. People can be pain-free. Likewise, people have disc bulges and have absolutely zero pain at all, and this happens all the time. So there's been a big change in getting just recommending operations for people on their spine and so on and so forth, and shoulders and knees for that matter, and because there's this correlation, or there's a lack of correlation between destruction of the joint and pain. In other words, people can have these joints that look terrible and be absolutely pain-free. Likewise, another person can have hardly any destruction of the joint and be in absolute agony. All right, so osteoarthritis. You'll generally see this person will be generally worse after being on their feet, standing and walking, because you can imagine it's going grind, so it becomes more inflamed and uncomfortable, and they'll be better for sitting, okay? They'll actually feel better because they're getting off their feet and taking the pressure off that joint, okay? They'll also, certainly as it progresses, have more difficulty moving it, and they'll also feel stiffer in the morning generally. But it'll be harder for them to put their shoes on. They'll lose this range of motion, bringing knee to chest range of motion and across, and they might have associated groin pain as well. So, all right, so there are the three big ones. From the lumbar spine it might be coming from, the piriformis, and osteoarthritis. They're the three major ones. The bursa, the greater trochanter, which is a bump on the outside. You can get bursitis, which is an inflammation of the bursa. But that'll generally be lateral. So it's not posterior pain, which is what I've been talking about. We're talking about lateral side. So it'll hurt on that lateral what's called the greatest trochanter of the femur. In other words, the bump that you feel on the outside of your hip there. So that'll be tender to touch because that's just pressing on the bursa there, okay? But posterior back pain, buttock pain, so think your buttocks at the back there, those are your three big ones. So let's have a look at how we're going to treat it using acupressure. So what you want to do when you're treating hip pain is, I'd start at the lumbar spine. Remember we talked about lumbar pathology? So start at the lumbar spine and work that, and also down through the sacrum there, because the other thing that can be a cause is sacroiliac dysfunction, the SI joint as it's known. So you're going to work all through those points there as you go down. Now, once again, just work all the way through the hip. Now, generally hip pain will be one-sided, unilateral. Obviously, if it's bilateral, it's both sides, then you do both sides. So you're getting your feedback from your client, you know, are you okay with this pressure, that sort of thing. You see I've got one thumb on top of the other to give yourself extra strength and just to take the pressure off. And just work around, and you'll find there are painful spots that you want to just rest on and really sort of ease up those pain. Because one of the things with hip pain, because it's so painful for the person, a lot of the other muscles will tighten up around. So you'll be working your piriformis, you'll be working glute max, minimus and medius. So you'll be just working the whole hip area there. So what I do, I just work around, feel for any tight ropey bands. If I feel those, I'll rest on those for a longer time. So even if it is coming in from, so you can use your fist, of course, elbows, forearms, but even if it is coming in from the lumbar spine, as I say, lumbar spine pathology, you still want to be working the hip anyway, because it'll be painful, because they'll be tensing up, it'll be painful for them. So you really want to work it anyway. So you want to just go slowly. As I say, keep getting your feedback all the time, because it will be tender on these people, it will be sore. And you're just going to work all around these spots. Especially when you get onto what's known as gallbladder 30, which is in the middle of the buttock, well, pretty much in the middle of the buttock, right where I'm pretty much there. And but that's right on top of your piriformis muscle. So you just work your way from the sacrum there, work right out towards the outside of the hip there, the greater trochanter, which I was talking about before. And just work your way around. Now, of course, you can do more work on the lumbar spine as well. And just see there, just working away there. It'll feel great for the client as well, because you're really loosening up these areas here. So there I'm just resting on where it's really painful there. And just constantly getting feedback from my client. So you're going to do your treatment. You don't want to do too much. So that's about 3.5 minutes. So that's really great. Now I'm going to teach you what you need to do after that session. All right, so you've done your treatment. Here's what I recommend that you suggest to your client. Okay, remember back to the lower back section where I taught you the exercises for the disc, so the ones on your stomach where you're coming up on your forearms and coming up. Give the person those exercises, okay? Because if it is a lumbar spine pathology, then that's going to help the buttock pain, right? Now, because one of the problems is if you give them, I say, a piriformis stretch, which bring up your knee to the opposite side, knee to chest, opposite shoulder, and crossing your legs over, that sort of thing, these piriformis stretches. If it's a lumbar pathology, what's going to happen is they'll be bending their spine and actually won't get better, and more probably will make it worse because they're flexing their spine, the one we don't want them to do. So that's what I suggest you do. Give them the lumbar spine ones and get them to do the tennis ball, which is also from the lower back section, the tennis ball on the buttock, okay, up against a wall. This is what I give my clients all the time. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because if it's piriformis pain, then get them to, and advise them to use a tennis ball against the wall. They can do it on the floor, but you've got much more control against the wall. And just tell them, if you get onto a painful spot, just sink your weight into it comfortably. Don't hurt yourself. Don't make it too painful. But just sit there, and they can do that and hold on to those points for, say, 20 seconds if they want. And then just sort of explore around that buttock area. So as I say, so you're loosening up the buttock muscles, the hip area. If it's piriformis and that sort of thing referred from there, then it's going to loosen it up. Likewise, if it's lumbar related, then that's going to help push the disc forward. Okay, so that's my recommendations for you to tell your clients. Do the lumbar exercises and do the tennis ball against the wall. As I say, then you're killing two birds with one stone. You're going to help either or both conditions. Okay, and I think I've had a lot of success, and I've seen a lot of hip pain that does come from the lumbar spine. So that's what I recommend. See how you get on.